good afternoon, ladies and gents. Thank you very much for tuning in to our recording today and our webinar of card tokenization, accelerating the digital payments wave of Africa. Today, we'll be discussing some really important topics around tokenization and card adoption and digital card adoption across the African market. We'll be discussing MeaWallet and who we are as a solution provider in terms of tokenization and how we drive digital payments across the continent and the globe. And we'll also be discussing a number of our solutions, particularly our ITSP solution, as well as our Issuer Pays solution, which comes together when coupled to provide you as issuers and fintechs across Africa to allow your cardholders to perform NFC and contactless payments at POS terminals. At the very end of this recording, my colleague Artis will be performing a demo of one of our customers, Swedbank in Europe. This is used as an example to show our African issuers and fintechs how this process looks when your user simply taps their smartphone onto POS terminals to make payments for, of course, the Android-based smartphone holder. So without further ado, we'll be diving into the agenda. So first things first, we'll be discussing who we are as MeaWallet, and we'll be discussing a little bit more about what we do and how we do it and where our focus is currently being targeted. We'll then dive into what is card tokenization. This is the fundamental layer of tokenization and, of course, the technology that we provide. We'll be diving into that in some depth. We'll be discussing how tokenization strengthens security and, of course, why tokenization was created in the first place. We'll then be looking at who are the role players in a card tokenization project. And this, of course, is really relevant to you as issuers, fintechs, and telcos, to ensure that you know exactly what needs to come together to ensure that your users can tap their smartphones to pay in the African market. We'll also be discussing everything that you should know about Issuer Pay and NFC payments. So we'll be discussing absolutely everything that is required, and it'll give you a better sense of how and why these technologies are used. And of course, they do come with maximum efficiency in terms of our cardholder experience and contactless payments. We're looking at what are the prerequisites are of Issuer Pay and how these Issuer Pay projects typically play out in terms of the implementation process. I think that's very important. What do they entail? How long do they typically take? And also we'll be looking at the implementation process and flow. How do I implement card tokenization and NFC payments with MeaWallet? And lastly, as I mentioned a bit earlier, my colleague Artis will be displaying a live demo of the Issuer Pay solution, which of course is one of our largest customers in Europe, and their current flow of how that process takes place from the initiation and authentication of the smartphone for the cardholder all the way to the actual payment of the relevant tap to pay functionality. So diving straight in, who are we? So MeaWallet is essentially regarded as a global tokenization specialist, and we've dedicated a vast amount of resources to solving some of the most complex digital payments and tokenization problems since the turn of the 2010s or 2013. We're headquartered in Oslo, in Norway, and we also have a very large development and technical office based out of Latvia in Riga. And of course, we've expanded our operations to really across the entire globe, where we service over 200 issuers and fintechs across the earth. Now, MeaWallet has focused a lot of its attention on emerging markets. And some of these emerging markets, of course, entail the African continent, where we are currently empowering what we call a new wave of contactless payments and digital payment adoption across the entire region. A short phrase or statement that I'd like to make today, and of course, a bit of a rhetorical question as well, but I think what's important for us, and we're seeing this growth in Africa, which is really rapid and really fast. You know, it's growing exponentially in the African market when it comes to card usage, virtual card usage, but now also contactless payments and tokenization. So what we would like to state and kind of bring forward to the African market is who will lead this contactless wave in terms of not only country, but also companies across the continent. So I think the race is on in that sense, and we're already seeing a lot of these fintechs and issuers pushing forward towards the contactless payment space, and there are certainly a couple front runners who are very close to being full adopters of contactless payments and issuer pay solutions across the African market. And we expect to see far more growth in the coming months, and of course in the next quarter in Q1 2025, and of course beyond that, moving into 2026, the following year. So now diving straight into what we're discussing today, and I think what's important here is to discuss the core technology and the core underlying infrastructure that allows us as African issuers and African banks and fintechs to actually make use of contactless payments through the rails of Visa, MasterCard, and potentially even Amex. Now, card tokenization can be described as a security-based technology, which of course is standardized by bodies like EMVCo. And in this process, sensitive card information is replaced with what we call a token or a digital identifier. Now, what this means is that we can process payments without ever exposing or utilizing our sensitive card data like our CVV, PAN, and expiry. So we're actually revoking and removing that sensitive card data from the payment process through the process of tokenization. Now, all the major payment schemes like Amex, MasterCard, and Visa, they've all gone ahead and they've adopted their own token service provider platforms or TSPs. And this is used to support card tokenization. For example, MDES, which stands for MasterCard Digital Enablement Services, and VTS, which we can describe as Visa Token Services, sum up that exact platform which we call token service providers, specifically dedicated for tokenization, and of course to generate tokens, store tokens, and of course to control and manage tokens as well. Another key benefit of tokenization is that we can only use a token in a specific context. And I'll be discussing that a little bit more in the next slides when we talk about tokenization and its security-based effectiveness, and of course its use cases in terms of ensuring that our transactions are safer, and of course that we once again remove that sensitive card data from the mix. So how does tokenization strengthen our payment security? And as we can see on the diagram on the left-hand side of the screen, we can see a little card that says MeaWallet, and this represents our sensitive card information like our CVV, PAN, and expiry. Branching out of that, we have a number of token environments. For example, token 1 could be our issuer pay app. So as an African bank or issuer or fintech, let's imagine this is our banking or fintech app. And for the sake of this explanation and example, we'll call that fintech X. So token 1 represents fintech X. And now, because you've embedded MeaWallet's issuer pay SDK into your banking app to allow for tap to pay for Android smartphones, a new token will be generated for that specific environment. So the sensitive card information represented by MeaWallet will be tokenized via the TSPs and of course via MeaWallet's proprietary solutions. And this will be passed into the SDK, which resides in fintech X, which of course could be your fintech or banking application. That token would then reside in that environment and would be used for tap to pay environments. However, in other environments, for example, token 3, let's say you're in a region outside of Africa or in South Africa or regions in Africa that do have Apple and Google Pay, which of course at the moment is still very scarce. Token 3 could represent your Apple Watch or Samsung or Google enabled watch. A separate token, different from token 1, would be utilized in that environment because all tokens are different in specific environments. For the sake of the example, the last token, which we'll be discussing, is token 4. This could be Amazon, Netflix, or HBO, or any environment or merchant where your token is stored. And this would also represent a completely different token and of course all merchants thereof would be different as well. So this gives us a good understanding that tokenization allows us to create separate and individual context-specific tokens for a myriad of different environments. And the reason for that is if someone had to intercept token 4, 1, 2, or 3, or any of the tokens displayed on the screen, they would still not be able to trace the token back to the sensitive card data, which of course is very important for fraud-based cases and for theft, and the mismanagement and usage of crime and the usage of a sensitive card, which of course could be our cardholders. So very secure and protected. But I think let's go through some of those points again. So essentially, a single card can be associated with multiple tokens, and that's exactly what we're seeing on the screen and on the diagram on the left. Each environment requiring a completely new token or digital environment. Of course, token 1, token 3, token 4, and all tokens on the screen are completely different digital identifiers. Another important point is that it's almost impossible for fraudsters, hackers, or criminals to decrypt these tokens to access that sensitive information. And of course, lastly, it provides us with an extremely robust process and of course allows us to fortify that payment security process through the removal of all of that sensitive card information, which again is our CVV PAN, expiry, and card holder information. Now that we've discussed the main tenets of tokenization and how tokenization benefits us in terms of security and of course in terms of practicality, it's important for us to discuss who are the key role players in a card tokenization project. And this is very relevant for you as issuers, banks, and fintechs. So you have a full understanding of what needs to come together in order for you to start your contactless payment journey and of course your tokenization journey. Now, the first party that comes to mind is the issuer. So this is either you as an issuer, or of course as a fintech, you may be affiliated to an issuer, which may be in the form of a BIN sponsor. Now, in this case, the issuer's responsibility is to make decisions and key decisions on each tokenization request. And this can be based on several or a myriad of parameters, which allows us to ensure that our tokenized cards are, of course, issued or directed to the rightful owners amongst customers. Now, of course, in this case, issuers must be connected or enabled for TSP integration or token service provider integration. And those are those parties that we mentioned a little bit earlier, like MasterCard, Visa, or MasterCard Digital Enablement Services, and VTS, which are the token service provider bodies of MasterCard and Visa. And of course, this connection allows us to facilitate core tokenization or ITSP. The next step or the next party involved in a card tokenization project is of course the TSP itself, the token service provider, Visa Token Services, and MasterCard Digital Enablement Services. And of course, in some cases, Amex Token Services as well. Now, these are the entities that allow us or essentially generate the tokens, which we saw a little bit earlier, which are mapped towards that sensitive card information. Now, that's really important as they actually physically generate those tokens and, of course, store those tokens as well for us to utilize in different environments, as discussed in the previous slide. Lastly, we have the TRTSP, which in essence can be regarded as a number of different acronyms or an expanded format, token requester to token service provider. This can also be referred to as issuer pay or tap to pay. But essentially in this case, the token requester is the common name that we call all wallets that request payment tokens. And they request payment tokens from the token service providers, as of course they generate these tokens. Now, token service or token requesters to token service providers include Apple Pay, Google Pay, Samsung Pay, and of course MeaWallet's issuer pay, which we're discussing today. So MeaWallet's issuer pay can be used in regions even where Google and Samsung Pay or other Android Pays are not available. But essentially, a note, TRTSP or token requester to token service provider can be regarded as an issuer pay, HCE, or of course, a tap to pay. And that just empowers your fintech or banking application to simply tap on POS terminals to make payment. And of course, for Android smartphones only in this scenario. Now, diving into what is Issuer Pay. So we've discussed really all the prerequisites in terms of how we get to the Issuer Pay environment. And we've discussed core tokenization, the security benefits thereof, and of course, some of the parties that are involved and the role players that are involved in this process. But when we look at Issuer Pay, essentially what Issuer Pay is it's a pre-certified SDK. And this, of course, is a mobile SDK that will allow you to transform your current fintech or banking application into a fully fledged NFC wallet, much like Google and Samsung Pay. So a really important factor here is that we can bypass the need for Google and Samsung Pay through MeaWallet's proprietary solution. In this process, we can also issue our relevant virtual cards, and we can store them within the application and, of course, activate them within seconds through our Tap to Pay and NFC SDK. Under the card in your banking application, let's use Fintech X for an example once again, you will see a button under the card saying Enable for contactless payments. Once you've clicked that button, your SDK is now enabled and your users will be able to utilize their smartphone to tap and pay at POS environments. Once again, Archers will be discussing this and taking you through this process through the end and towards the end of this presentation. And this will bring everything together so you see the full flow of how this works for you as a fintech or bank. Now, the great thing about Mea Issuer Pay and our SDK is we utilize the modern capabilities of the smartphone, the Android smartphone, such as biometrics and, of course, facial recognition and other authentication methods to initiate payments. And what's a really great thing about this is that we allow you as the bank and fintech to choose something which we call CDCVM methods or cardholder verification methods. So you can actually decide how you want the card to behave in its virtual format in the phone. And what that means is, do we want the card or the virtual card to behave just like a physical card, where you can tap and enter a PIN once we've reached a certain velocity or volume or purchase amount? Or do we want to authenticate every transaction? So do we have to unlock our smartphone? Do we have to enter the banking application perhaps to make sure that this payment follows through? So these are subtle nuances that we allow you to decide as fintechs and issuers in the African market. And this, of course, allows you to customize the solution to ensure that this is really developed and personalized for your customers and for your market segment and market in your region. Now, as discussed a little bit earlier, this is only available on the Android platform. So, of course, you can only enable this for Android smartphone users in your relevant region. And of course, there is the emergence of iOS Issuer Pay for Apple. However, we are estimating that this could still take upwards of 5 years to enter the African market because, of course, there are a number of legal lawsuits currently underway with Apple and the European Union to ensure that Apple slowly but surely opens their NFC antenna to third parties. So it is something on our roadmap, but for now, the Android platform is something that we support. And of course, this is a native Java SDK. Now, something really important, and this is related to one of the last points on the last slide. And you may be asking yourself, oh, well, Apple is not available, so this is, quite a large roadblock in our environment. However, that's not the case at all. So there's a really large importance of Mea Issuer Pay in the African market, particularly for Android smartphones. And that's because of the statistic that I'm just about to mention. More than 84% of Africa's smartphone users use Android operating smartphones. So already 84%, which is the vast majority of smartphone users, are Android smartphone users. So we already have a massive market that we can tap into by simply using MeaWallet's Issuer Pay SDK. iOS at the moment accounts for less than 14% of the African smartphone market share. So of course, that is still relatively low, but of course, in the next coming years, we will be able to support this in the market once those regulatory boundaries have been released and eradicated. Now, of course, again, we are emphasizing this major opportunity to ensure that we can empower our Android-based smartphone users to perform these tap-to-pay functionalities. And this, of course, is still via our MasterCard and our Visa infrastructure and rails through those TSPs that we mentioned, MDES and VTS. Another really important factor here is that we don't have to wait around for Google or Samsung Pay or any of the other Android Pays to enter our market. We can simply go ahead, get in touch with MeaWallet, and we can start our journey with our TRTSP and Tap to Pay solutions. So we can remove and replace both Google and Samsung Pay. No need for us to apply and wait for these global entities to enter the market. Lastly, Issuer Pay really does encourage users and cardholders, and of course mobile payments in general, to ensure that we can eliminate cash and of course older card technology. So it is pushing us into the environment of new innovative technologies and digital payment technologies, which allows us to strengthen security, but also to ensure that we have maximum efficiency in our payment processes. So moving on, I think we've discussed a lot in this webinar so far: tokenization, security-based methods and functionalities, but also the actual solution that we provide and the value that we bring as MeaWallet. But now it's important to discuss the prerequisites of an Issuer Pay project. So if you're sitting and you're watching as a bank or a fintech, what do you need to do to get started with such a project? Of course, we would recommend to reach out to MeaWallet, and we can do a bit of hand-holding to assist you in this process. But of course, some of the main key important points are stated on the screen. The first one that we've seen is to sign agreements and to establish projects with the schemes and the pays. So depending on your scheme, whether you Visa or MasterCard, it's important to approach both Visa and MasterCard and your key contacts and to initiate and open the tokenization project for both RTSP and of course for a TRTSP or Issuer Pay. Now, in this process, you'll be reviewing and understanding all the requirements. So the schemes will be providing you with a list, there may be contracts involved, and of course there may be some marketing efforts involved as well to ensure that there's a sufficient launch of the solution. We then have to integrate to the token service providers. MeaWallet, who is a token solution provider, we actually provide APIs that allow you to easily connect to both Visa and MasterCard, or MDES and VTS. So we can be part of this project, and of course we'll be able to assist you to swiftly connect to these parties. We have two APIs, pre-digitization API and customer lifecycle API, and of course we can get you up and running in no time to ensure that we now have the capabilities to actually start generating tokens through the TSPs, and of course we can have a tokenized offering rather than simply only physical cards. Once this is complete, we develop the solutions, and of course there's some back-end work on your end which MeaWallet will assist with or guide you with, and of course there is mobile application work, which is really where you consume the MeaWallet SDK, and of course we'll support with many of the lists of requirements and what is actually needed to be done. In this environment, you'll actually be embedding the solution into your application for, in this case, the FinTech X environment. We'll then be preparing the business launch and the marketing launch, and of course this is just guiding us towards that go live date, and then we finally have our commercial launch where we share our solution with our end customers, and of course we are now live with our virtual cards and our tap to pay solution. Now, moving on to one of the final slides, this is a little bit of a diagram and a chronological order of how and what these projects look like. So as I discussed in the initial slide, we're discussing the implementation activities for Issuer Pay. And I think this slide is very important as it isolates a number of parties, and of course activities that are needed to be completed. So moving from left to right, of course, we can see milestone 1 is the kickoff of the project, where we conducted an analysis and of course a discovery of what we need to achieve. Following this, we have the first step, and we'll be starting with this purple or pink box, which involves the analysis of the Issuer Pay SDK. In this environment, we'll be sending you a configuration. We'll be setting up a Slack channel between our development teams, and here you'll be receiving the Issuer Pay SDK, which we mentioned a little bit earlier would be coming in the format of a Java SDK. Here you'll be choosing the Issuer Pay configuration, which could be that CDCVM method that we mentioned a bit earlier. How do you want this card or virtual card to behave within your application via the MeaWallet Issuer Pay SDK? We'll also then be discussing a testing schedule, which would be assisted and of course provided by the schema as well. So they'll be discussing that with us to ensure that at a later stage we can test the solution so that it can go into a live environment. Now, just above this, we also have the pre-digitization and implementation, and of course the token lifecycle management. This orange box at the top of the screen is the core tokenization setup, which I mentioned a bit earlier. So this is that connector between you as an issuer or fintech to the actual token service providers. And MeaWallet will be assisting you in this process through our two APIs, pre-digitization and customer lifecycle API, to actually connect to either VTS, Visa Token Services, or MDES, MasterCard Digital Enablement Services. There are a couple API calls that are required on your end, but we will assist you in this process to ensure that we can swiftly connect to either of the TSPs in this specific environment. Now, moving down towards milestone 1, once again, I know we've skipped to milestone 2, but of course, pre-digitization and token lifecycle management is a very important component, as it still acts as kind of a prerequisite to tokenization and issuer pay solutions. But moving back to the blue environment here, which is where we analyze the UI requirements. And of course, we sign contracts with the schemas and fill in schema documentation. Although these are milestones which are staggered, for example, milestone 1 and milestone 2, we often recommend for us to kick off these simultaneously. Have these discussions with the schema, and of course, in parallel, start the pre-digitization project and also start looking at the MeaWallet SDK. Moving forward, we then have the SDK setup. This is where we prepare the SDK and we pass this SDK to your backend or to your developers. And this is where you would start consuming the SDK into your relevant banking or fintech application. In parallel to this, we have something called bin tokenization. And this is where those bins or the bins utilized for your cards, essentially a switch is flipped from a Visa and MasterCard perspective to ensure that that token or that bin is now tokenized, and we can actually start the generation of tokens and the usage of tokens for payments. There are also other things called key and certificate exchanges, where MeaWallet and the schemes exchange a number of key information to ensure that we can kick off and provide a full scope RTSP and token requester solution or project. Once again, just above that, in kind of duplication, there's also a network keys that are exchanged, typically related to TAV keys or WSDK keys, depending whether it's Visa or MasterCard. And also, we start the issuer pay testing. We start actually testing the solution in your environment, in the FinTech X environment. How does this function? How does this work? Is it working to standard? Lastly, once those tests have taken place, we start looking at the scheme validation and certification. Has the solution performed as we wanted it to perform? And of course, there's relevant sign-offs on that to ensure that we are fully happy with the functioning of the solution. Lastly, we have production setup. So we move into the production environment, and in the penultimate stage, we launch our solution out into the market. And finally, our users across Africa can start using their smartphones to tap to pay at POS terminals, which of course is that end and final goal. Now, we've discussed a lot around tokenization, core tokenization and issuer pay, but I'll now be handing over to my colleague Artis, who is one of our product managers for the issuer pay solution and our ITSP solution, and he'll be running you through exactly what an issuer pay solution looks like from a cardholder's perspective. Now, this is very important as it will give you a full visual representation of what every step entails, and you can start mulling over how this will look in your app in Africa and, of course, in your fintech or banking applications. So over to you, Artis. Take it away, and let's see how the issuer pay functionality and SDK performs in the Swedbank application.
Hi, everybody. My name is Arthurs, and I'm a product manager here in MeaWallet, and I will show you the demo of the tokenization experience and also the payment experience. We can see here I am mirroring my personal device, and also with me I have a test point of sale terminal. So we will look into both cardholder tokenization experience and payment experience of our issuer wallet SDK. So let's go into a production demo. So this is a Swedbank application that we're gonna look into. It is a large Nordic bank that is a customer of ours, and they have implemented the issuer wallet solution. I have already logged into the application, so let's click on it, and I got taken to the card screen. The user interface is completely up to the issuer, so this is how the bank envisioned to display the card tokenization experience. But the requirement from Visa and MasterCard is that there must be a button somewhere to enable NFC payments, create a tokenized card. It must be descriptive enough for the cardholders to understand what will happen when I press it. So here we can see a section of mobile contactless payments, at the moment disabled. And let's press on a button to enable. When I will press this button, a token will be created for the card in the bank, and this technology is enabled by our issuer wallet SDK. So let's press on enable. So there is a short instruction how to pay. Let's press continue and press done. So now you see that the screen is black because I got taken to another application that is our local 3DS vendor, and this bank also uses it. So they have added additional verification before the token is created. This is not mandatory, but as an additional security measure, they have added this additional step before. So let me just enter my 3DS code. And now you should see that I am back into the banking application. There is a loading screen, and that is it. We just created the token. As we saw, the flow was really smooth. I didn't need to enter any card details or anything at all in the app. So it was secure because no PCI sensitive data was exposed, and it was fast because I was already logged into the app. So no additional verification, no SMS OTPs or email OTPs were required. Here, as an additional step, the bank is offering me to set this payment method as a default. So let's use it. When I press on this button, automatically in Android settings, it will be set up as a default payment app, meaning when I take my phone out of the pocket and just put it on the POS terminal, this is the banking application, and this is the tokenized card that's going to be used. So let's update these settings, and now we can see that the enable button has changed to a pay button. This means that now we have mobile contactless payments enabled. This means that the token has been created. So let's look at the normal payment scenario, how I would use the tokenized card. I have locked my device. I can put it even in my pocket. And let's imagine now I go to the store and want to buy something for myself, like groceries. I take my groceries to the cashier, and we have now this POS terminal where the sum of the purchase would be entered. So let's put 30 euros, for example. Now the time has come for me to pay, and I would unlock my device to verify that I am here and I am ready to do the payment. Let's enter my PIN code, for example. And now let's do a tap on the POS terminal to see how the transaction experience happens. As you saw, the transaction was successful almost before I even tapped on the POS terminal. So this has been achieved by extensive testing and improvements for SDK to greatly increase the transaction times. The SDK actually works faster than the plastic cards. But returning to the cardholder experience, we saw that the only thing I need to do was take my phone out of the pocket, unlock it, put it on the POS terminal, and the banking app automatically opened, indicating me that the transaction has been submitted to the POS terminal. So let's press done, and you can see now I'm back to my device lock screen. In the previous transaction, it took some time for me to unlock the device because my fingerprint didn't work. So let's now try once again with biometrics this time. I'm going to verify myself with biometrics and do another transaction, this time 10 euros. So as you can see, I'm putting my fingerprint on the scanner. Maybe it's a bit dirty. Okay, the phone just got unlocked. And let's do another transaction. We saw immediate success. So this is how the device, the NFC payments would be used day to day by your cardholders. There is another flow when you go inside the banking app and press the button pay. So this is mandated flow by both Visa and MasterCard that is required in case issuers have multiple cards. So I would need to have an option to choose a card and then press on the button pay. It is also mandated if you provide only one card to the issuer, so there always must be some button pay or similar text inside the application. As I mentioned before, user interface is not something we control. It is completely up to you how you present the visuals to the cardholder. So let's press this button pay. Unfortunately, I got verified very fast. So I didn't manage to show you how I entered my fingerprint because my face got scanned and was used as a biometric input instead. So it happened so fast, the verification, that it's even hard to present it. So let's just do another transaction. And now the screen ready for the payment change to success once again. So another requirement is, of course, the deletion of the tokenized card. So when I go to the manage section to manage my card settings, we can see there's once again a switch, enable mobile contactless payments, that I can turn off. This can also be a button, delete token, or similar. Once again, the UI is up to the issuer, and they have chosen to implement it as a switch. So let's turn it off, move back to the previous screen, and we can now see that the pay button has changed to enable button. So the token is now removed, and if I try to do a transaction, it would, of course, fail. Payment failed. So the payment failed because I didn't have any card tokenized. There is another app I want to show you today. It's called MTP Sample app, and this app is readily available for all of you. We have a section in our developer portal. We will share the link in the chat where every one of you can gain access to a GitHub project where this app is located. This is app including our demo SDK, where cards also can be tokenized, and you can already create your own demo experiences before signing any contracts or before engaging at all with MeaWallet. You can even have a readily created application with the whole payment experience, and when you are satisfied, you can engage with us and then reuse all the implementation with real production environment SDK. So no work that you are going to do with this app is going to be wasted. So let's look how the GitHub project looks like. I'm going to enter the application, press on a plus sign to add a card. So as we can see, there's no beautiful visuals. There's nothing like that. This app is purely meant for programmers and for you to build your own UI on top. First, we can choose digitization method. There's a PAN, encrypted PAN. These are options for PCI certified issuers. If you are not PCI certified, you would use card ID, and card ID is also sometimes card reference, PCI card token, some non-sensitive value mapping to your card in your card management system that we exchange later from our backend integration with your CMS. So let's choose PAN for this demo. Press on button Get. Complete the first step to initialize digitization. Enter CVV and complete digitization. So when we looked into our production example, all of these steps happen completely in the background. All I had to do as a cardholder was to press enable, and then the app automatically fetched all these values and entered into the app. And we have a tokenized card. As I mentioned before, there are no beautiful visuals. But just to demonstrate, I want to show you that also this app contains the real SDK, and we can do a transaction on the test terminal. First, let's set this app as a default payment application. The same thing we did with the other banking app, meaning when we will take out the phone or the pocket, what app is going to be used? Now we want to use this demo application, so we're going to update the settings. So this app has been now set as a demo app. Now let's set this card as a default payment card and also select it for contactless payments. When I press pay now, see my screen turned black, but that's just because a biometric overlay was shown over the app. Android Studio doesn't allow to mirror this section. I just entered my fingerprint, and now the app says that it is ready for payment. So let's try to do 10 euros once again. And we can see that it was a success. So this app is set up on MasterCard and Visa simulators that we have built in-house. So you can do a full implementation of the SDK fully on the simulators. And when you start the project with MasterCard and Visa and MeaWallet, we will reuse your front-end implementation and just switch the endpoints in our backend. We will move them from MDES or Visa, MasterCard or Visa simulator to MasterCard and Visa test environment, and afterwards to MasterCard and Visa production. But you will be able to keep all of the work you would have done before. So yeah, so that's it for the demo section of the presentation. And yeah, thank you. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Artis, for that demo. That was very insightful, and I think that really gave us an absolutely amazing image of what our solutions could look like. And of course, now, you know, the possibilities are endless for the relevant fintechs and banks that are watching today. This really brings a new dynamic to the payment process and flow. And by simply integrating the MeaWallet SDK into our application, we start and bring extra value to our customers and, of course, unlock NFC payments for the Android smartphones across our market segments and, of course, for our customers. Thank you very much for listening to our webinar today. We really appreciate it. And please feel free to get in touch with me to ensure that we can start and kick off your journey for the issuer pay and tokenization-based solutions. We look forward to empowering you in terms of the NFC payment space. And once again, we really are looking to instill leaders in the African market who will be leading this technology in terms of contactless payments. So thank you very much. Have a great day, and we'll be in touch soon.